For this assignment, I'm going to be focusing on Cecil Gaines from The Butler. What stands out to me about Cecil isn't just who he is, it's clearly how you can see how his behavior is shaped through exactly what he's lived through. His environment, the systems around him, the culture that he was raised in didn't just influence him. It defined how his character learned how to survive. When I look at Cecil, I don't just look at a man making choices. I recognize someone who's navigating life with safety as a bar for every one of the decisions that he makes. There are many parts of the film that resonate with me personally. Being in a system that can allow violence as part of its structure changes how you recognize and understand your safety within any environment moving forward, especially when these moments happening at such a young age, when harm is normalized and there's no accountability. You don't just move around freely. You learn to assess, and you have a hypervigilance about yourself and life. What's safe, what's not, how to adjust to it, how to stay protected within a place that often doesn't feel like it. For me, working through that kind of lens takes time, it takes support, and it takes access to support. That's not always something that people understand or available for them, or something that people understand they have. So when I look at Cecil, I don't just see his behavior. I understand how long it takes to unlearn what survival requires of you. We'll now get into the assessment, and we'll look at it through the three perspectives, right? Cultural and environmental factors, the first part of the assessment, is one of the most defining moments that I feel was Cecil witnessing his father being murdered in front of him without any form of justice. To see someone in power commit harm and face no consequences, and then growing up having to serve those same people in that same system, that changes how you move through a world. What really lands for me is trying to put myself in a position, and been in some positions, not just seeing violence, but seeing it go unanswered, and then having to build a life inside that same structure. For me, this perspective from my perspective, like honestly, this shifts everything about you. You're not just making decisions, you're constantly asking yourself, am I safe? And you can see that just based in how Cecil moves through his life throughout this film. From that point on, Cecil just isn't living, he's really calculating, is it okay? Through control theory, his behavior makes a lot of sense. When someone has very little control over their environment, they learn how to control what they can. For Cecil, that was his emotions, his tone, how he presented himself, his composure. His composure isn't just who he is, it's how he creates that form of safety throughout the film. Then you see this continue in the White House. It's a different environment, but the same structure of power exists. Through behavior setting theory, it explains how the environment dictates behavior. Each setting has its own rule. On the plantation, those rules were explicit and tied to his survival. In the White House, they're more subtle, but still rooted in this hierarchy where he's expected to take up space but not be seen or heard. He's expected how to speak. He's really told how to move, how to present himself, how to be present with people who have needs but not be visible. Cecil learns how to read every one of his environments and adjust to it accordingly. If you want to look at this from a materialist perspective, his life is shaped by the conditions around him: systemic racism, limited opportunities and access. His role as a butler isn't just a job, it's one of the few pathways available to him. From the mentalist perspective, he internalizes discipline, respect, and restraint. These aren't just values, they're tools that helped him navigate the world, so they become an integral part of how he understands himself. From the practice perspective, this becomes who he is over time, right? With repetition, this is the only way I understand myself. And if you look at the full spectrum of how he lived, it makes a lot of sense that finding safety, finding access, being able to create a life for himself and give his children a life he never had. The way that shows up is something he repeats often. That becomes his identity. So it's interesting. The movie's called The Butler, and that's really how his identity becomes his full self. We can also look at this from the critical perspective, and his experience just can't be separated from a system of power. His behavior isn't just individual, it's a response to the structure that defines what's possible for him. What stands out to me about these theories, that they aren't abstract, they show up in real life. When someone learns to navigate the world through safety and control, those patterns don't just disappear when the environment changes. It becomes an integral part of who we are. The cultural, community, and religious assessment, Cecil understands himself as to be a man, a father, a provider. It is shaped directly through his experiences. His culture teaches him how to show up with dignity, to work hard, to protect what he has, especially if you look at the culture of what it means to be a butler. And at the top of where he landed, he became the pinnacle of his own experience. If you look at it from the plantation to working in the house to then serving others and then getting to be able to serve the president. But what stands out is how limited his sense of community is very early on. And even throughout it, it's shaped by survival and it's shaped by feeling safe around people. Over time, that begins to shift as the world around him changes, but internally he's still operating from that same place. There's also a strong value system in how he carries himself. Doing things the right way is very important to Cecil. Staying composed, but that also creates distance, especially within his own family unit. And we get into some of the groups, the organization, and social movements. Cecil's role in the White House puts him inside one of the most powerful systems in the country, but honestly, it's without any real power. He's close to it, but he's not a part of it. And at the same time, his son is fully engaged in the civil rights movement. He's protesting, organizing, and pushing against the very system Cecil is trying to survive within. This is where a lot of the tension shows up, right? Cecil's approach is about surviving the system. Louis's approach is about challenging it. Lewis's approach is about challenging it. What stands out to me most is not just how they're different, but how they're not that they're different, but they never fully bridge that gap, right? From where I sit, Cecil never really gives his son the chance to understand why safety is so important to him. That context is missing, and at the same time, his son is living a different reality, one where there's more space to push back, one at the cusp of the civil rights era and starting to see movement forward. So you end up with two people responding to the same system in completely different ways, because time and space and time, person, space, and environment, these all affect how we understand what we're going through. So without fully understanding one another, there's this push and pull relationship, right? And that's not just a family dynamic. That's a generational shift that shaped by the environment, the opportunities presented to both of them, right? Some of the considerations we can look at for social work practice, and now I'm a little over, so I'll try to be quick. If I were working with Cecil, it would be likely to the point where the relationship with his son is strained. At a micro level, the first step is building trust. Someone who's lived the way that Cecil has isn't just going to open up. It takes a lot of rapport and feeling safe in those environments. Trust is going to be a key factor. The work will focus on helping him connect the dots between his past and how he has shown up. His own need for control, his silence, and the way he's often protected himself, helping him understand that all these come from somewhere. Part of the work would also be helping him recognize that what protected him in one stage of his life may not serve him in the same way now. not in the way that dismisses his experience, but in a way that creates flexibility. At a mezzo level, this is the work with, this is also family work. The dynamic between Cecil and his son isn't just about communication. It's about two different lived experiences shaped by the same system. So creating space for a conversation could be an essential part of their healing. Supporting both them and able to hear one another, not just agree, but to understand. So coming from that place of true understanding. Macro level, it's hard to ignore how the system influences both of them, but especially Cecil. His life was shaped by racism, limited opportunity, and institutional power. His son, on the other hand, responded to those same systems through activism. This means the work isn't just clinical. It's also about the awareness of how systems shape our behavior. It's about recognizing that people are adapting to structures that were never designed for them. Success wouldn't look like Cecil becoming a different person. It would look like him being more understood, more able to express himself, and more able and open to connection. From a life course perspective, when you look at his life, it makes complete sense. Cecil was shaped by the time where survival required control and awareness. His son was shaped at a time where there was space to challenge and push back. Same system, different entry point. For me, this reinforces something important. Behavior is always connected to environment and experience. People are doing best with what they can and what they have learned. And when people know better, I firmly believe they try to at least to do better if they're not positioned with a lot of the baggage that comes with what they've been through. Cecil's story is a reminder that what we see on the surface is rarely the full story. What looks like silence or distance is often protection. What looks like compliance can be survival. For me, this is what social work really is: being able to see the individual, the family, the system, all at the same time, and understand how they're constantly shaping and interacting and at play with one another. And when we take the time to understand that, we don't just see behavior, we see the person behind it. Thank you.